that I think the conversation about success is overrated. And actually, we need to talk much more about progress. It's a lot to do with self-love too, actually, and going, you're worth it. That is your value. Those transitional moments really shape your career because they're moments of self-reflection. They're moments of stopping, of thinking on the stuff you do, not in the stuff you do. And I do believe if we were to allow ourselves more transitional moments, our careers will become so much more powerful.
Welcome to the StageLink podcast, your access and connection to the live performing arts. In this podcast, you'll hear from some of the industry's most inspiring people from around the globe who create magic on stage and backstage. Our guests share their knowledge, passion, and the real stories of how a show comes together. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the StageLink podcast. My name is Anna Robb, and today we're talking with Alex Mecklenburg. Alex is an experienced provocative business coach working with founders, C-suite, and leadership teams to truly understand and shape their own vision. She helps them create powerful stories that allow them to leap, but also design the behaviours, practices, and actionable roadmaps that are needed to bring their vision alive. Her work has helped organisations shape new business models and creative structures to deliver innovative products and services. She's also a certified leadership coach, an experienced sense maker, and a catalyst for collective energy who brings cross-sector experience, creative thinking, and strategic focus to every project. Alex loves working together with others in order to bring cross-sector experience, diverse thinking, and collective energy to any project. Her career spans over 30 years in the creative industries, working with creative agencies, large corporate partners, startups, and NGOs. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a mouthful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a good way to get my mouth warmed up for the conversation, I think. Now, I have to say, full disclosure for those who are our listeners today, that Alex is actually our business coach for StageLink. And so it's a bit of a weird thing to have the tables turned today with me asking her the questions instead of the other way around. How's that feel for you, Alex?
It's okay. I'm just going to dance with it, I guess. It is very strange. It's very strange. I was sitting there going like, who was I prepared for this meeting? And now I know how you feel all the time when you are in the other chair.
I love that. I love that. So for our audience, I'd like to get started by you describing from your experience what business coaching in the arts looks like.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. And the really boring answer is, it looks like any other business coaching. And the reason why I say that is because I think for me, generally, business coaching is actually really simple. And it often isn't what people think it is. People generally think business coaching is all about developing business skills. And yes, that is part of it, but there is so much access to knowledge out there now. You can have a beautiful mini MBA if you wanted to do that. I think business coaching at its heart is really to help people understand what it is that they want to do. And that is very difficult to get from an MBA or from a business study course. So this idea about why do I want to do what I want to do? What do my goals really look like? Can I measure them? Can I articulate them? Do I understand what progress looks like? I know we talk a lot about that. I think the conversation about success is overrated. And actually, we need to talk much more about progress. Identifying my strength. So all that stuff that has at the heart of a deep self-reflection rather than skills training. I think that's probably my answer on that one.
Oh, that's interesting. And do a lot of the people that come from arts organizations, because I just know from my own experience that I've been learning through attrition, I guess, because I didn't learn that at university, and I learned the craft of what I do in the arts, but not the business of it. And do you find that people come in to talk to you and they don't have a lot of those foundational knowledges in terms of what it is to run a business and how to move it forward?
Yeah, I think the first step is to know what you don't know. And I think that is actually the hardest thing. I think a lot of people come to me and they don't know what they don't know. And I think that is where I can really help them. Because once you know what you need, you don't necessarily have to do it all yourself. As I say, there are brilliant resources out there. You could go into partnership with somebody else. But I think that step between not knowing what I don't know and knowing what I don't know is the most helpful thing. And that is where I play a lot. And what you need in that step of not knowing to knowing what you want is you need to be very clear about your own area. So I will start with you clearly, you know, what is your why? Why do you want to do something? What is driving you? Is it passion? Is it purpose? Is it both of that? What might that look like that you want to do? And then how do you want to do that? From that moment on, together we'll get a pretty good understanding of what it is that you need, what you know, and what you might not know.
And that's sort of a transition, I guess, in some sense for many people going into the business of arts. And a lot of people in our industry transition from different roles in their career. So they might be an artist and then they're going to go into a coach, or they're going to go from a particular stage management into producing roles like I have. Do you help people navigate through those decisions, and what's your process to help them decide what their next phase of life is?
So, first of all, I think those moments of transition, those transitional spaces are actually shaping careers. So, I don't know whether you know that famous quote. I think people say it might have to been Debussy or Mozart, but there is a music quote which says, the silence between the notes is as important as the notes themselves. And I always love that. I think actually those transitional moments really shape your career because they're moments of self reflection, they're moments of stopping, of thinking on the stuff you do, not in the stuff you do. And I do believe if we were to allow ourselves more transitional moments, our careers will become so much more powerful. But a lot of the traditional narratives go, oh, you need to shorten those transitional moments as much as possible. I have people who are moving out of a role or a job and they go, oh, I really want to have a new job in a month. And then we have very open conversation. What is possible? What is the financial situation? Do you Are you able to maybe spend more than a month? Are you able to spend 2 or 3 months? Because this is the moment where you can reflect and rebuild.
Mm. No, it's so true, isn't it? And I think that with some of those transitions, especially with a lot of the people in our industry are freelancers, and they will jump from gig to gig to gig. And it's kind of like they have a kind of a famine mindset. Like, if I don't take this one, then will I be out of work for 6 months? So it's going to be quite a lot of mental strength to take a step back and take a break to evaluate what might be the trajectory. Because sometimes if you're just taking gig after gig after gig, that you might end up way over that way when you rather be in a different direction, don't you think?
Totally. And I think the first thing I always do, and I think I've done that with you and as a team, is when you start to build a business, whether you are a business of one or a business of many, you actually do three things, and people forget about that. Think about a Venn diagram of three kind of balls. The one thing is service delivery. Is actually what you love doing, the stuff you will do. So if you think about, I'm a greengrocer, I love selling green grocery. That's my service delivery. People go, this is what I want to do. They forget that there's another ball that they need to manage, which is how to run the business of doing that, the finances, the legal things. And then the last ball is about how do people know that I exist? So that is the marketing, it is the storytelling. And what we expect at times is that we only play in the service delivery. So I'm only doing the greengrocery and this is how I calculate my costs. But those transitions in a beautiful space should be covered by what you charge in the service delivery. So that work that you get here needs to cover all of those three balls. And I think that's a big realization for people when they start doing their business plans and their calculations. I also always ask people, what do you need to keep going? So I'm one of these very weird business coaches who look very holistically. So when we build business plans, I've just done that with one of my clients. I said, when the going gets tough, what do you need to keep going? And she was hilarious. there's a brand in the UK which has a slightly kind of more expensive clothing, but still high street prices, right? And she said, you know what, Alex? I would love to be able to walk into the shop and just buy a piece and then walk away. We built that in her business plan. We said that you need to make sure that you have the money to do that at least every quarter because something hard will always happen. So you have to have a realistic basis of understanding how you keep going.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I like a lot of our industry again is also built on passion, but it has also got to be balanced with the idea of making money. And I think a lot of people, artists, wrestle with that because there's this kind of stigma surrounded by the fact that if you're a true artist, it's not about the money, right? And I think like I know you're shrugging, but I know people that think like that, right? So what would be your thoughts on how to maybe reframe that for artists and how to balance and do both and how they exist in the same space?
So I don't really talk about money and I talk a lot about money. I talk about value. In a world where money still is the predominant currency for value, we talk about money. I I don't want to make a lot of money, but I want to be able to do the things that I can do if I have money. Yeah. I also, interestingly enough, have a very clear point of view for me, what is enough money, which some of my colleagues look at me and say, well, that's a crazy thought. And I go, no, this is, I don't want more money. I don't need more money. This is enough money for me. So I think the first reframing is to start to think about value. Everybody wants to be valued. It's one of our core human needs. So if we have a business and we don't get paid, it isn't just that we don't have the money. We actually break because we will feel deeply unvalued. And that's a horrible space to be in. And that's why I like to talk to artists a lot about their relationship to money and starting to reframe that so that they actually understand for themselves that this is not something I'm asking that I have no right to ask or I sell out, but it is literally, again, a transitional space to be able to do what I want to do. Because if I can't live in a flat that is warm, that feeds me, how can I keep creating what I create?
Mm,
You
yeah,
know, it's a lot to do with self-love too, actually, and going, you're worth it. That is your value.
yeah. So how does like one begin on that? Part of that is obviously being known. How does one begin on that marketing front as an arts organization or as an individual artist?
To really understand your value. So what
Mm,
value we bring to an audience? And I think a lot of times artists, when they haven't thought about it, forget about the amazing impact that art has on humans. Also their skills. I mean, we talked before we went into the recording, we talked about sports analysis and arts analysis and how they might not work very well with each other at times. But one thing that sports coaches have learned a long time ago, that actually all of their transferable skills of motivating people, keeping people engaged when the going gets tough, is really needed in other areas of this world. So sports coaches realize that they have a value to, say, a business team that is outstanding. I truly believe that artists have the same. There are fantastic conversations at the moment with organizations to think about more how an artist's view could help that. Because they approach things differently. They think about things differently. Does that help?
for sure, they look at the world differently, right? So using that perspective for on a business is I actually think that's a great way for people artists to sort of I don't want to say make money, but also utilize their skills to build their, it's also not sort of linear in the fact that you could do that and, right? Like you could do
Yeah.
something that is consulting from an artistic perspective. So then you can go home and paint or go home and create a dance or go home and create choreography, right? It's like sometimes the work that you might do is not necessarily or your passion is not something that you get paid for, but you're still utilizing some other skills that could bring you the income to do that component of your life.
Yeah. So in England, we talk a lot now about a portfolio career. I have a portfolio career. I have three small consultancies because I learned very early on that I'm not very good in doing things on my own. So I always looked for co-founders. They're small. We want to stay small. We don't want to grow. Growth means something very different to us. It's another great question as a business coach. What does growth mean to us? What do you mean when you say we want to grow? Do we want to grow? But I think this idea that in the world that we live now, you don't need one job anymore. You can do loads of different things as long as you are able to tell the story of how they all connect. And the reason why you need to do that, I think the flash word is personal brand, is so that people understand what would they come to you for. There is a story that you are passionate about. I can tell you I'm passionate about people getting to where they would like to be. I'm passionate about the power of creativity and how it helps problem solving. And I'm passionate about technology and how it helps us being more human. That is more or less my portfolio career in a small sentence. And then people can go onto LinkedIn and say, oh, she does that. Oh, she does that. I understand now why she does both of them.
Mm. I think from personal experience that for me, because I rushed through my 20s in doing freelance, there's not that opportunity to, talk about that break and have that clarity to frame what you represent and what you value so you could then communicate that to people. So even having that moment to sort of say, okay, what do I represent? What do I value? And then how do I share that with the world?
Yeah. Especially
Mm.
if you're very passionate about something, a lot of my clients have found jobs that they didn't know existed by starting to be really engaged. For example, the climate crisis at the moment. There is such a need for new stories. There is such an opportunity for artists to be involved in this discussion because the old stories didn't work. The stories of doom and gloom didn't work. We noticed this has not had a lot of change. So coming into conversations open, I think that's the other ability. Understanding what is my value, but not quite knowing how I'm going to deliver that value and walking into conversations and listen rather than coming in, this is who I am. That's what I do. I come into conversations and I go, these are the things I'm passionate about. These are the things I'm quite good about. And somebody says, oh, I'd love you to come and work with us on this one a little moment. That might not even have a job title. It's just a thing that I do. I struggle with job titles because I do so many different jobs at any given time. I think you probably do the same thing, right? Job titles are,
Hmm.
I think, very traditional. Now they are much more, how would you say in English? In the moment, today I do that and tomorrow I do that.
Yeah. I sometimes refer myself to as a professional gap filler. It's a
Hey,
wide
try
term,
honest.
but
Yeah,
that's it. In doesn't matter which sort of role of entertainment I'm playing, I'm filling the gaps, making sure it all
yeah.
gets sewn together. Yeah.
I'm the same, people and the best you ask me for a technique, the best way I learned that from a mentor of mine a long time ago. Write an email to 15 friends. These should be friends that you've worked with, okay? They should be people that appreciate you, but are also very happy to tell you the truth. Um, and you ask them one question: what value did I bring into our collaboration? Or what value did I bring into this job? I've done that twice so far in my career, and it has helped me reshape and take the next transition because
Wow.
you hear outstanding things. What I heard back at a time where I was very wobbly of what am I going to do next was a wonderful articulation of, I think, about 15 emails who all started to talk about the same thing. When we work with you, Alex, it can be quite hard. We learn a lot. At the end of this process, we look back and we go, we had no idea that we would be able to do that. That led me on the process of moving towards coaching. I literally, when I read this, signed up to a proper coaching qualification about 10 years ago and explored that area. I didn't have names for that, but knowing what your value is, asking people what they define your value to be, because it's so hard to see that yourself, is the first step on starting to shape what you do.
It's such a vulnerability though, right? To ask 15 people and brave, But I think, like you said, that's the only way that, I have had people come and make comments to me about the way I've done something or not, either good or bad. And it has been a completely different perception of how I felt doing that task myself, And it's like, oh, did I come across that way? Oh, okay, good or bad. So it's really
Exactly.
interesting how you're perceived, isn't it?
And really, really helpful, and really starting to be, oh, okay. Like you said earlier on, there's different titles for us. I'm very good in creating collective energy. I don't really know how I do that. I have some methodologies, but generally it's because I love that. That's the place I thrive. I am a pattern spotter. I'm just very good when you tell me lots of things and I go, I'm starting to see a little pattern here. I play it back to you and you go, oh, interesting. And then you are able to do something with that. None of these have professional, traditional job titles. And I think that is where a lot of people in the arts get stuck. What is the name for what I do? That's the last question. Start to
Yeah,
be really clear. What do I do and how does that add value? And when I say add value is people are prepared to pay for that.
absolutely. And what you also do is, you see patterns, and maybe you were referring to patterns to the things that we're doing, but you're also seeing patterns in our behavior and our default reactions to some of the things that we're trying to do. And that's this ingrained thing of default behavior and challenging us to shake that default behavior and think larger on our approaches and different ways of doing things. And we were doing a training course the other week with my colleague, and he was teaching people on decision making. And one of the things that he started was like, come up with the craziest idea of a solution that you can come up with. It can be crazy. It was like, a conflict between colleagues. Okay, they can jelly wrestle it out, you know. Like, let's come up with these, all these jokes sort of started to fly around between what we could do. We could lock them in a room and they could figure it out themselves, or how would we manage this situation? But through that thing, in that brainstorming of being silly and laughing and doing that, came some serious solutions that you would not have come to if you were going to the default, like, well, let's start a disciplinary process with these two people. Here's some other ways we could approach it. And I think that's what you do a lot with us, is keep shaking us out of that box. And from that box, coming out of that box, we've been able to make some very key definitive decisions on how to move forward, right? So I think that's creating that space for people to think larger and look at their situation from different perspectives is really important.
And it is really hard to understand what is happening when you're in the mess, right?
Mm,
So in team coaching, so when I work with teams of businesses, that's what it is. You don't need me to tell you what to do. You will find your solution yourself. What I help you is to realize what the heck is just happening right here. That's where you get confused. Me too, when I work with, we have our own coaches. We get head to head with one of my co-founders. And in that moment, I don't really know what has happened. What's just happened here? And I think this is also where a coach is really helpful of going, what is happening here? The big reminder when people talk about strategy, they always talk about what has happened in the past and what is happening in the future. One of my colleagues who I used to work with in strategy all the time always said, Alex, the most important question in strategy is what is happening right here, right now. And that's really hard to figure out at times on your own. So
no,
having somebody who looks at it from the outside in and goes, this looks like this. Um, you know, you as a team generally always come up with your own solutions because you're good. You know what you want to do. It's just that you're blocked somewhere. And I kind of go, interesting, this is what happens. So I think that's another big thing between a business coach and maybe a traditional consultant. Consultants much more there to bring you the answers, and they're needed. There are areas where you definitely, I have a tax consultant, the tax
yeah.
consultant would come to me to say, well, what do you think? Because I have no idea. But
Exactly.
But building your business, you have ideas. So my role is much more to help you understand them, write them down, deliver a plan, create some measurements so that you know that you're progressing, and then benevolently motivate you at certain points to keep going.
Mm. No, that's so good. For those people who don't have the money or the funds to employ people like yourself, such as coaches or business consultant, business coaches for what they need, and as an individual, what kind of tools do you think that people could look for or seek to help them in that journey on their own? Is there ways that people could do that exploration without having to pay for somebody to get them through it?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So first of all, I've always loved peer coaching, which is a fancy word with talk to your friends. Um, just be aware that sometimes there could be some weird friend dynamics happening, and you just need to be very open about that at the beginning to say, is this a friend's conversation or is this now a peer coaching conversation? Because you might deal with it quite differently. So I do deeply believe in finding people who are in the same situation than you, and try to figure it out for each other, giving space. One way that works really well is that if you meet every 2 or 3 weeks and somebody brings a challenge into the room, then you ask that person to be silent for about half an hour and everybody suggests their solutions. And then you have the person to kind of reflect and then say, that is what is helpful. Really helpful, super helpful. I think that is actually the most powerful thing of how to doing it. There are a lot of reflection tools. I mean, hey, AI, there's a lot of these things out there now. If you're more of a soul, if you want to figure it out yourself, find yourself a couple of tools that help you reflect by the end of each week. I mean, artists often have read The Artist's Way. I don't know whether you know the book, but that is
For
nothing.
sure.
The Artist's Way is actually a brilliant business coach in a way.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. A lot of the methodologies that are described there will help you build whatever you want to build.
It's funny that you brought that book up. I was thinking about buying that for my son for his birthday, which is today.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's great. So you mentioned AI, and I know that you've done a lot of investigation and exploration in it recently. How's your thoughts on how AI will affect our industry as part of the live entertainment industry?
Well, I think we probably already know the answer, right? I think it will definitely disrupt the industry for good and for bad. I always describe myself as a long-term optimist. I might be at times a short-term pessimist, but I'm a long-term optimist. And I am actually really fascinated about the capabilities of AI and how you can link those with the creativity of humans. So I am using a lot of AI myself now already in especially areas that I don't really enjoy doing so much. I'm also very aware that I use AI in a relationship of me being the editor and AI creating the first draft. So I would never use AI as a decision-making tool without having reviewed it. But I think it has allowed me now to spend more time on the stuff that I really enjoy doing. So I think if you build a business, don't shy away from exploring AI. Chances are that you've already used AI because AI is now built in most of our tools. I think that's the other thing. In the arts, I think a lot of that also has to do with your very personal values. Where do you want to employ AI and where do you not want to employ AI? I, for example, will not use AI to create any visual imagery because I appreciate the work of a graphic designer, of an artist, and I appreciate the conversation that leads me to that amazing work more than having that piece of work done within a second or two. But that is my personal value system. And I think that is going to become harder and harder for people to be very clear, where am I going to use it and where am I not going to use it? And that has very little to do whether you're, whether you embrace technology or not. It has to do what is okay for you in terms of how, what are the trade-offs of using that AI?
Mm. I think that's one of the things that, when you were talking about AI with us at StageLink, and then reflecting on that a little bit further on the industry, that perhaps you companies that can then be defined by their relationship with AI, so that it's all out there and you could use it and you could do 90% of your work through it. But by having a company, whether it be an individual or an online site or a business or a live entertainment, publicly declaring your ethics surrounding AI is a defining part of your brand, and defining part that people will come to you or not come to you, basically based on where you might sit on that fence. And I think that just becomes perhaps another facet of what you represent. A lot of brands now are more about, people are quite attracted to brands because of maybe their ethics, let alone, rather than maybe just their products or maybe just what they can offer. It's about who they represent. Big companies might support arts institutions because they're aligned in their missions together, or they appreciate the arts company or the dance company and their ethics in which they promote, and they want to be associated with those ethics, right? Because it's a good representation of their corporate brand to be endorsing stuff like that. So I think that kind of woke up the thought process for me with what we're doing for our website, but also as it pertains to my work in live entertainment, is like being very clear as to how we play in that space. But it's also good it's very easy to be overwhelmed by all of the possibilities, right? And I feel like saying like, this is my stance today. Maybe it'll change in a year's time, but my stance today is, I don't want to do this, this, and this with AI, but I will do this, this, and this. And the world, I'm going to tell you that's what I will and will not do. And you can decide whether you hang out with me or not, right?
Exactly. I think there are some very basic things, which is a understanding, how is this AI built? What is happening with the data that you feed into it, and what data do they use? And just being aware of that is your groundwork. And then it is about your own values. Why would I use AI to create, for example, for me, to prep for the sessions with you? I love that. That is what I do every day. I do not
Mm,
use AI for that. I might use AI if you ask me to do some research around a certain area to
mm,
short this and then start to look at them. Being very aware, though, that I need to double check what data is in and what data is out, and also double checking that AI has at times also the tendency to make shit up. So you just need to be aware of work with it. But I find it really helpful. Again, it comes back to the question, why am I doing it? What is the purpose? What are my values? And what do I want to see ultimately? What is my vision about the world that I want to work and live in as an artist, as a coach, as a producer? And these are hard questions because nobody can help you answer them. You have to answer them.
mm. And what I love about making those decisions for yourself is, well, I know for me, is that I feel like a sense of control in a place that feels like so out of control, right? I subscribe to a few AI newsletters and I see all these things. You could do this now, you can do this now. And I get quite excited, but it's like, no, I can only do so much with it. And this is my frame now. And I feel that then that's my level of control. And I think that's what maybe a lot of artists and there's a lot of talk about, IP and all of the things where people could be using. And it feels like I could think there can be a sense that it's running away from us and we're not part of it. And I think, we still have agency there. We still have our own control of it in how we participate in that space.
Absolutely, especially if we use it in our own organizations, in our own groups, in our own communities, and being open and talk about that and have that discussion of what do we use it for and what do we not use it for, and being aware of the risks as always, like any tool. But I think for artists, a business is actually yet another thing that you shape and that you build and that you create. And artists are brilliant in creating things. They might be not so brilliant in complying to old models. And I actually think that is a real opportunity, one of the questions you sent me was, what do I love most about my job? And one of the things that I love most about my job is to work with really awkward clients. And I explained that to you. All of us have shortcuts, right? So we go, oh, when A happens, oh, obviously then B happens, right? And I have these clients who go, well, how about C? And couldn't we do D? And what they do is they challenge traditional narratives. They say, I want to do this and I want to do this. Whereas everybody says, you said earlier on, I need to decide between profit and passion. Do I?
Mm,
I love those questions because they get you to new answers. And I do believe that one of the things that artists are brilliant in is to come up with new questions. And I think there's a quote, I can't remember who said it, is for us, the way to really innovate and reimagine the way we live is not to have new answers, but to have new questions.
mm. I love that.
And that is what artists are brilliant in.
Yeah, I think that's such a unique place that they play in for sure. That's great. I love that. Well, now that you've answered that question, I love it. I'm going to ask you my final question. If you could change one thing about your job or the industry that you work in, what would that be?
Well, one thing you already said, which is I would love it to be more accessible. I already have a tiered charging model, so I definitely charge based on what people can afford within reason because I also need to live. I also coach pro bono in creative schools. I personally believe if I had had a coach when I was in school, my world would have looked very differently. So that's the first part. The second part is I would also love for people to feel comfortable that it doesn't make them less professional working with a coach. I think that's a really big thing, and I still have that at times. I should be able to figure that out on my own. My answer is absolutely. You are probably able to figure that out on your own, but it will probably take you much longer. It could potentially be quite a painful experience. And whether you come out with the answer that is the best for you don't know. So I think that is probably the two things. A, the mindset, where does coaching fit in our society? And the second one is how to make coaching more accessible.
I love that. And full disclosure, we have you as a business coach, and I also have a personal coach from my other work as well. And I think having an outside perspective is such, like you said, an opportunity for you to growth because you can get so stuck in your head about where you should be, what you should be doing, or where you should be going. And a coach just breaks that open over and over again and gets you to challenge it. And I love those sessions because you always walk away going, oh my God, I've got more. You feel lighter because you feel like you've got more opportunity that you were doing when you were putting yourself in a box and trying to go in a direction, you know?
Well, a
Yeah.
lot of it, if I was to summarize what we do, I think together we create clarity.
Mm,
That is a skill to create clarity. And sometimes you can just get completely stuck in your own head and there is absolutely no clarity and you layer it over and over and over and over again. I leave you with a slightly disgusting analogy, but it's my analogy and I love it is I thought long time to explain to people what I actually do as a coach. And my sister has two cats. My relationship to cats is difficult, but they're very creatures. And they have this not so nice tendency to maybe throw up hairballs at time. But that is what I got. I think what I help people do is to look at their hairballs, to unpack them. And because the moment you unpack it, it is all doable. It's just when you have this big ball of messiness, you go, I have no idea what to do. But if you sit with somebody and start to unpack it, understand that this is not one thing. You're trying to probably solve 40 things at the same time in this moment. Calm starts to come in, focus starts to come in, and you walk out with clarity and you very often know exactly what to do. You don't need me for that.
hmm hmm Amazing.
So yeah, hail to hairballs.
I love that analogy. So good. Alex, thank you so much for spending time with us on the StageLink podcast. What a pleasure to talk about you this time. And
I
thank you
know.
for joining us.
So much for inviting me. I hope it was useful.
Of course.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the StageLink podcast. StageLink is an online platform that gives you access and connection to the live performing arts. As a guest, you can read about live performing arts from across the globe and gain insights from performers and artists on stage and all the amazing people who work behind the curtain. If you are an industry professional, StageLink Pro offers jobs, networks, and career support tools, and you can build your own professional profile on the site. As a StageLink podcast listener, you are eligible for 20% off your StageLink Pro membership. Visit us at stagelink.com and when joining, use the code SLPodcast. StageLink, that's STAGELYNC.com.